Yo, what is good, everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy Podcast. My name is Tyler Anderson, and I am your host. And in this episode, we are going to be previewing Week 11 of the 2025 fantasy football season. We're going to do a quick recap of Thursday Night Football and the big Henderson game, the big breakout. We're going to talk about that really quick. And of course, most importantly, and this is what the people are here for, we got my starts of the week for Week 11. This is episode 52 of the Fantasy Football Prodigy Pod. Thank you for enjoying wherever you are listening. If you want video, you can head over to YouTube and head over to the Fantasy Football Prodigy channel. Just type in Fantasy Football Prodigy. You'll see my ugly mug there, talking up some ball, hopefully nailing these predictions. But yeah, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, comment, review, and show yourself some love, man. You deserve it. You know, it's been a long season, and you're sticking with it. That's why you're here, right? So we're gonna get you looking right for these matchups. Let's start with the recap of Thursday Night Football, though. New England Patriots at home against the Jets. They were big favorites, and they got the dub, 27-14, to move to 9-2 on the season. Jets now 2-8, but Drake May played well. He's in the MVP race. It's pretty much him and Stafford at this point. Drake May was 25-34, 281 and a touchdown. Only added 4 for 2 on the ground. So not the biggest fantasy day, but he wasn't really pushed to need to do much. But the big story here, Travion Henderson, the rookie, was buried behind Ramondre Stevenson on the depth chart, getting limited touches all season. Last week, no Ramondre. Henderson he showed his explosive ability, had a good performance, but this week he took it to another level. He went 19 for 62 on the ground, so not like necessarily the most efficient, but he had a couple rushing touchdowns, and then through the air added 5 for 31 and a touchdown. So 24 total touches, 3 touchdown game. He looks great. He looks explosive. Like Ramondre Stevenson just couldn't do this. He has like breakaway run potential. He's even gotten like just clipped on a couple runs where he could have taken it all the way if it was like, if things went slightly different. So he's looking great. Once Ramondre comes back, it is going to be a split in my prediction. But I think, Henderson has shown enough talent where it's like the coaching staff can't just limit his role like they were in the past. But I do think Ramondre will be a factor and be kind of annoying for Henderson managers. Other than that, Stephon Diggs, I'm in a guillotine league where I had a few good options at receiver. And I ended up going with Stephon Diggs in one of my receiver spots. And he paid off really well, especially in like a full PPR league where you're looking for a floor. He went 9 for 105 on 11 targets, which you love in a game where, the Patriots didn't necessarily need to air it out a ton, where they were kind of in control and where it was kind of Henderson, scoring all the touchdowns. Diggs was very good. And then Mac Hollins, he's actually had a few good games here with no Kayshon Boutte. Hollins has been a decent sleeper. I don't know if Boutte's going to come back next week or what or not, but he's been serviceable. 4 for 64 on 5 targets. Hunter Henry 4 for 45 on 6 targets. He was probably started in some leagues. Kyle Williams 3 targets but didn't have a catch after having that long bomb last week, and then Demario Douglas was the only other player to catch a pass for the Patriots. 3 for 36 on 3 targets. And then, oh my gosh. Guys, it's that time of year. Holy cow. Give me a sec. Don't look at me. Oh my gosh. The air, I live in Minnesota, and the air is like, it's getting to be that time of year where your throat is like dry constantly and people start to get sick all the time. But, speaking of being ill, the Jets offense, I believe they scored on the first drive, if I remember right. Just running the ball, got in the end zone. They scored first, if I remember correctly. And then, Fields, 116 passing yards. Hopefully you took his under on the passing yards. 1 touchdown, 11 for 67 and a touchdown on the ground. Breece Hall, a little disappointing, 14 for 58 on the ground. Only 2 for 6 through the air, so no passing game involvement really, and 58 yards and no touchdown. You're not really happy with that. Patriots are a very tough matchup, especially when your offense is not good. And then obviously no Garrett Wilson, so You know, you got Mechie with a touchdown. Mason Taylor was the second leading receiver. You know, Ruckert was the third. Adonai Mitchell had a drop. He's 1 for 10 on 6 targets. So don't need to spend a ton of time on that offense. So, yeah, the Patriots are looking good. And let's get into my starts of the week, shall we? Starts of the week for week 11. I have a couple extra this week. There's a couple players I wanted to highlight more than I normally might. So I got 2. Well, I'll surprise you as I go. So these are just starts of the week, guys that I think are in good positions to do well, maybe relative to like where they normally perform, if that makes sense. Here, let me move this over here. All right. So we are going to start at the quarterback position. Quarterback start of the week, Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers on the road against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Herbert is the quarterback 4 overall on the season, and now he gets to take on a Jags defense that has allowed the second most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. Jacksonville just got torched by Davis Mills last week, allowing him to finish as the quarterback 1 overall on the week. If Davis Mills can light up this defense, I can't wait to see what Herbert does. Justin Herbert has also offered a great rushing floor in most games this season, which we love for fantasy. I like Justin Herbert as a mid quarterback 1 in week 11. And we got a bonus quarterback chat, bonus quarterback start of the week. So moving on, quarterback start of the week, Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys on the road against the Las Vegas Raiders. Dak has shown elite upside this season in the right matchup and game environment, and I think this is a great spot for him on Monday Night Football. This game has a 50.5 point over-under, and the Cowboys have a 27-point implied team total, meaning there are plenty of scoring opportunities expected in this contest. Also, the Raiders run a ton of zone coverage, which Dak has performed well against this year. This is a great spot for him and his playmakers, and I like Dak Prescott as a mid quarterback 1 in week 11. Should be good. Should be a good game. Maybe, you know, for fantasy, that is. Why is that game not coming up on my list? I just wanted to make sure that was still the line. I wrote that note a little bit ago. Oh, I forgot to say, by the way, the date. It is Saturday, November 15th, early morning. Why is that game not on here? Hello? I'm literally looking at a list of NFL. It's on DraftKings, by the way. That's where I get my lines. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Yeah, it's at 49.5 now, but yeah, it close enough. We'll call it 50. All right, moving on to the running back position. Running back start of the week, Rico Dowdle of the Carolina Panthers on the road against the Atlanta Falcons. Rico has taken over the Panthers backfield, and he has been dominant in that role. He's probably an auto start at this point, but I wanted to still highlight him this week because of his dream matchup. He gets to take on a Falcons defense that has been destroyed by running backs, allowing the 5th most fantasy points per game to the position on the season. This is the same defense that just last week allowed Jonathan Taylor to score an absolutely psychotic 48 fantasy points while going for 244 and 3 touchdowns on the ground while adding 3 for 42 through the air. Rico Dowdle himself already has 2 games with over 200 total yards on the season, and while you can't project that type of performance, I think he is in a prime position to smash in this matchup. He was dealing with a quad issue during the week, but he is off the injury report and should be good to go for Sunday. I like Rico Dowdle as a must-start running back 1 in week 11. And then we got a bonus running back. We got a bonus. Running back start of the week, Jaylen Warren of the Pittsburgh Steelers at home against the Cincinnati Bengals. Warren has been a solid running back 2 all season and currently is the running back 21 in fantasy points per game. Now he gets arguably the best matchup possible against a Bengals defense that has allowed the most fantasy points per game to running backs on the season, both schedule adjusted and just in general. He faced the Bengals on the road in week 7 and finished as the running back 10 on the week without scoring a touchdown, going 16 for 127 on the ground and 4 for 31 through the air. That game was an epic shootout between NFL elders Aaron Rodgers and Joe Flacco, and the two teams combined for 64 points as the Bengals won 33-31. Vegas is expecting this matchup to produce fantasy goodness again, as the game has a 49.5 point over-under. There are a lot of exciting options in this game, including both quarterbacks that I mentioned, Chase Brown, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, and even DK Metcalf is in a good spot to bounce back from a rough stretch if they actually throw him the ball. I'm hoping for a fun game, and I like Jaylen Warren as a low running back 1, high running back 2 in week 11. Should be a good one. Should be a fun one. Hopefully Joe Flacco and Rodgers, they can replicate what they did last time. I know that's yeah, and let me make sure I got that score right. Bengals Steelers score. Yep, 33-31. That was a crazy game. All right. I got one wide receiver. No bonuses, no surprises. So moving on. Wide receiver start of the week, Jaylen Waddle of the Miami Dolphins in Spain against the Washington Commanders. Tyreek Hill suffered his season-ending injury in week 4, and since week 5, Jaylen Waddle is the wide receiver 6 overall. In that span, he has had at least 80 yards in every game other than in that disgusting weather game against a tough Browns defense in week 7. Now he gets to take on a Commanders defense that has one of the worst secondaries in the league and is a top 3 matchup for wide receivers on the season. I like Jaylen Waddle as a low wide receiver 1, high wide receiver 2 in week 11. And then moving on to the tight end position, going back to the well, even though it didn't work out last week. Tight end start of the week, Oronde Gadsden of the Los Angeles Chargers on the road against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Gadsden was my start of the week last week. He wasn't doing much to start the game, and then he left that contest early in the third quarter with an injury. While the injury looked bad in the moment, it turned out to be a quad bruise and luckily not something more serious. He appears to be healthy and good to go as of this recording, as he has been practicing in full this week. Despite playing less than 3 full quarters, the dude still saw 6 targets in limited action. He had been absolutely cooking in the 4 games leading up to last week, and now he gets a great matchup with the Jags, so I'm going right back to him if I have him. Jacksonville is the schedule adjusted and overall second best matchup for tight ends on the season. They have given up some big fantasy performances recently, and I like Oronde Gadsden as a mid tight end 1 in week 11. All right, those are my starts of the week. Playing with confidence. Hopefully they do well. Last week we had Jackson Dart as a start of the week who did great. Obviously I didn't make a clip about him, so I don't get any credit on TikTok for that. Rico Dowdle did pretty well. His yardage was okay, and he got in the end zone. So a couple repeat starts of the week with Rico and Gadsden. So Rico, he's pretty much an auto start at this point. Roma Dunze was my wide receiver start of the week. I didn't make a clip on him, and he did great. And then Gadsden was my tight end start of the week. So I only ended up posting clips on like TikTok and stuff for Rico and Gadsden, and like Rico was, good. Gadsden was bad. I feel like every time I do that, where like I don't have the time or whatever to fully post like every start of the week on a clip, that's when they pop off. Like last year, it was Devontae Adams in that 3 touchdown game against I can't remember who it was. I think it was the Jags when he was on the Jets. I think he had like a 3 touchdown game, and I was like, of course. But anyways, moving on. Not living in the past. We're gonna preview the rest of the games for week 11 really quick here. Bye weeks, we have the Colts and the Saints, only 2 teams on bye, but no Jonathan Taylor. That's brutal. In my guillotine league, he was carrying me, but Diggs had that good start to the week at least. And then the Jets and Patriots already played. So first game coming up next is the Dolphins, quote, at the Commanders, but this game is in Madrid in Spain, so not really, there's not really a home team. So for the Dolphins side of things, actually the line here, 47.5 point over under. The Dolphins are 2.5 point favorites. No Jaden Daniels for the Commanders, so Marcus Mariota is going to get the start. No Terry McLaurin, no Treylon Burks. So I guess it looks like we're starting with Washington, I guess. Mariota is streamable. Not someone where it's like I'm excited to play him, but He's like he's someone you can throw in there in a pinch. And then in the running back room, it's disgusting. Bill Krosky-Merritt doesn't appear to be the guy. Like he hasn't really lived up to the hype, the Bill hype. Chris Rodriguez is kind of, it looked like he was maybe going to take over. He got hurt last week, but it looks like he's good to go. If I had to play one, I'd probably play him. But it's gross. I wouldn't want to play any of these guys. Just because, it's a committee, and without Jaden Daniels there, the offense is a little bit limited. At wide receiver, Deebo Samuel is going to have a chance with no Terry McLaurin there, but that's been the story for a while, and Deebo just has not been getting it done. He's still playable, but with no Daniels, that limits his upside a little bit. His last 4 games. So in week 6, on 15 yards, didn't play against the Cowboys, a dream matchup because he was injured. So he might have had a good game there. But then at Kansas City, 11 yards. At home against Seattle, 41 yards. And then last week at home against Detroit, 29 yards and got in the end zone. So, it's gross. He's playable. I'm starting him in one league and I'm probably benching him in another. I'm debating him versus Ricky Pearsall, who should be coming back this week. The Dolphins are also, giving up the 5th fewest points to wide receivers on the season. So yeah, it's gross. And then Zach Ertz is streamable. He should be involved, especially with no McLaurin, and he's playable. Not super exciting, but he should be good for at least a handful of catches. And especially if he gets in the end zone, you're going to be really happy. And then for what it's worth, the Dolphins are giving up the 3rd most points to tight ends on the season. So that makes that play a little bit better. For the Dolphins side of things, Devon Achane is obviously a must start. Jaylen Waddle, I highlighted him. Love him this week. And that's pretty much it as far as skill position players on the Dolphins. I don't really want to play Malik Washington. If you're in a pinch, he gets a handful of targets every game and really doesn't typically do much with them. And then I'm not looking to oh my, that's so funny. I said I'm not looking to I'm not looking to start Tua just because he's not great. He hasn't been great for fantasy. Now the Commanders are theoretically a good matchup, so there is a chance he has a good game. I mean, I like Jaylen Waddle, so obviously I think there's going to be some production there, but he's also very risky every week. Like, he has a floor that is extremely, extremely low. More of a guy I'm looking to start in like a 2-quarterback league maybe, or maybe a DFS dart throw. If that's kind of a weird slate though with the Spain game. This game kicks off at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time, by the way. So let's move on to the next game here. This game is a little more exciting in my opinion. Probably the most exciting game of the week, especially in terms of like playoff position. It's at least one of them. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road against the Buffalo Bills. Both teams at 6-3. I'll look at this line here. 46.5 point over under. The Bills are 5.5 point home favorites. The Bills have been kind of losing games a little bit. But they're still obviously a very talented team, and they're at home, so they are projected to win. Bucky Irving is out at running back again for the Bucs. Chris Godwin is still out at receiver. Mike Evans is obviously still out on injured reserve, but they're thin on offensive playmakers. So that's a little, unfortunate. They're going to be without their guard, Ben Bredesen. I'm not super up on their O-line, but he's out. And then Hassan Reddick at linebacker is also out. So they're going through it injury wise for the Bills. The big one is Dalton Kincaid at tight end is out, so Dawson Knox gets a bump there. Probably not someone I'm looking to start, but again, deep leagues, DFS dart throw, he's playable. You kind of hope he gets a touchdown. So the rest of the Bills side, it's Josh Allen as an auto start. James Cook, auto start. Each and every week, he's a solid running back one play. And then at receiver, with no Kincaid and with Josh Allen as the quarterback, you would think you would want to play a receiver. I don't really, which is sad. But someone is probably going to have a decent game. Who is it going to be? I would probably put my money on Khalil Shakir. He has the targets. He doesn't usually have a big ceiling, but I think he's a safe bet to have a decent game at least. And he's a solid wide receiver 3. You can take a shot on Coleman. He's been disappointing most games, but if he gets a big touchdown or whatever, you'll be happy. But I would prefer Khalil Shakir, and then that's pretty much it. And then for the Bucks, Baker Mayfield is a good start, obviously. He's been up and down lately just because, he hasn't had his weapons. And, the Bills they're more of a team you run on. The Bills are the 3rd toughest matchup for quarterbacks on the season. But Baker Mayfield is still in that low quarterback 1 range. Also, monitor the weather with this game. It's supposed to snow, which, that may or may not affect the passing. But there are also potential wind factors. So it says it's supposed to be like 18 miles per hour according to NFL weather. I know sometimes these platforms give different weather forecasts and they update them differently, but something to monitor. If it's going to be like super high winds or something, then maybe you limit your upside, but it doesn't really affect how I'm playing Josh Allen. I think he's going to get it done on the ground and you play him every week regardless. And then for Baker, I could see it going poorly just because he's had some dud performances with all these missing weapons, but they have Rashad White and Sean Tucker at running back. Even though the Bills are a team you run on, I don't think they're going to be able to just pound the rock with those guys. Tucker and White are both playable. Sean Tucker has been getting more involved in terms of splitting work with Rashad White. Rashad White is still a borderline running back 2. So he's playable. And then Sean Tucker is not someone I'm looking to start, but he's a guy you can start in a pinch. He had 9 targets last week, bye week the week before, and 12 targets in 12 carries, 9 carries and 12 carries. He also had a touchdown in that game in week 8. So, it's a decent matchup or it's actually, I believe it's a pretty good matchup for running backs. Yeah, the Bills on the season giving up the 6th most points to running backs. And then a receiver, Emeka Egbuka is basically an auto start, wide receiver 1. And then Tez Johnson, if you're going to take a shot on someone else, he's kind of a little guy, but he's in the wide receiver 3-4 range. He's been getting it done, getting touchdowns. That could obviously go away, but we saw Jalen McMillan kind of do a similar thing last year where it was he can't keep doing this, and then he just did. And I did drop Tez Johnson in Dynasty before the season, so it makes sense that he's been good. Yardage hasn't been great. So looking at his totals, so we'll start with week 10 last week. Only 5 targets, 4 for 42, but had 2 touchdowns. Bye week the week before, 5 for 43. The week before that, 4 for 58 and a touchdown. The week before that, 1 for 45 and a touchdown. And then the week before that, 4 for 59, no touchdown. So he hasn't been over 60 yards in a game this season, but he's had a touchdown in, at least 1 in 3 of the last 4 games, not counting the bye week. So, and then Cade Otton, even though it is a tough matchup for tight ends, the Bills actually give up the fewest points to tight ends. He is still playable, especially with the missing weapons for the Bucks. More of a low to mid tight end 1, but unless you have one of the top guys like McBride, Kittle, Bowers, Gadsden, who I talked about. I like Jake Ferguson more. You're probably playing Cade Otton. You maybe want to play Kelsey over him. I would probably lean Kelsey. Dallas Goedert is a tough call. You probably have a safer floor with Otton, but Dallas Goedert in that game that could be high scoring. You could see him get in the end zone, which is he's kind of has an outlier touchdown thing going this year, but type of game where you could see it continuing. But Otton is playable. And then moving on to the Um, LA Chargers on the road against the Jacksonville Jags. Kind of talked about this game a little bit already. But for the Chargers, well, actually, here's the line. Where is it? 43.5 point over under. So not a super high total at all. Chargers are 3-point road favorites. Quentin Johnson is questionable at receiver. Obviously, Amari Hampton is still out at running back. Joe Alt got put on injured reserve at tackle for the Chargers. So that's a big injury. I believe that, I think they already played the game without him, right? So that's very unfortunate, but I still like Herbert in this matchup, as I talked about. He's my start of the week at quarterback, or one of them. Jacksonville's a smash matchup, and he's great. Kamani Vidal at running back. The Jags are usually a team that give it up more through the air than on the ground. But Vidal is still a playable running back too. If you look at his game log, he's been ping-ponging between like good game, bad game, good game, bad game. So, yeah. If these trends continue, he had a good game last week, so he should do bad this week. But obviously that's not a good thing to rely on, right? Right, guys? Yeah, it's a stupid trend that obviously there's no reason to believe it should just continue to ping pong, but that's just what happened. But last week he saw 25 carries for 95 yards and a touchdown. Only had one target, turned into 1 for 13, but it's hard to go away from that workload. So I would be playing him in most cases as a running back too. You might have better options, but he's someone I'm probably starting. There was kind of questions about his workload with Jarrett Patterson getting more involved, but 25 carries, like, it's kind of hard to argue with that. And Patterson, do you even have a carry? Let's see. He was 1 for 1 on the ground, so not a concern, at least last week. And then at receiver, at one point in the year, it was kind of hard to know who to start just because everyone was seemingly, capable of putting up a good game. At this point, it seems like Ladd McConkey is the guy you want. He's a really good start this week. He is the pass catcher on the Chargers I would play with the most confidence. He's been seeing solid targets, getting in the end zone fairly often for, a player like him. And last week, 4 for 107 and a touchdown, only 6 targets, but not only 6 targets. That's solid. His last 4 games, 6, 6, 10, and 15 targets, 9, 7, 6, 7, 5, 9. So most weeks he's getting solid targets, if not great targets, and he's a great player. And then with Quentin Johnson questionable, if he is limited or out, that adds a little bit more clarity for the rest of the pass catchers, including Gadsden at tight end. He started the season super hot. He's cooled down quite a bit of late. He's been limited throughout the week, but it looks like there's a good chance he plays. So since week 6 at Miami, was he a goose that week? Did he play? I'm not seeing any snap percentages that week. He goosed against the Vikings. That's what it was. So since week 7, we'll say 6 targets, 2 for 30 and a touchdown that week. Then the next week, no targets, no catches against the Vikings. Next week against the Titans, 6 targets, 4 for 53 and a touchdown. You like that. And then last week, 10 targets, only turned into 5 for 42, no touchdowns. So he is still playable. Monitor the news for his health, for any health updates with his injury. But he's still a wide receiver 3 type of guy where, depending on your team, he could be someone you play, but not necessarily a must start. But Keenan Allen is probably the least desirable to play. Obviously, if Johnson is active, if he doesn't play, that bumps Keenan up a little bit. But he hasn't had a good game in a while. I mean, he's still like a borderline wide receiver 3, but he hasn't had a good game since week 7. We're going into week 11. In that week, he was 14 targets, 11 for 119 and a touchdown. But since then, he's had 5 targets in the last 3 games. From week 8 on, turned into 4 for 44, 2 for 41, and 2 for 19. no touchdowns. Last week against the Steelers, he just wasn't catching anything. The only reason he even had that second catch is because they gave him a cheap little like touch pass so he could pass Antonio Gates to be the Chargers all-time receiver. And that's the only reason he even had a second catch. So, you know, the yardage isn't really there. The targets aren't really there. He had that one game in week 7 with 119 yards. Other than that, he was in the 60s each of the first 3 weeks. And since then, he hasn't really been more than like 40 or 50s, and he's been well under that in a few games. So it's a little sketchy. And then Gadsden, like I said, I like him at tight end. I like him even more if Johnson is out. I didn't even talk about that in my start of the week segment, but I know he had a rough week last week, but he had been great, and the Jags are a great matchup. And then on the Jacksonville side of things, Brian Thomas Jr. is the kind of the big injury to watch here. He's questionable with the ankle injury. He missed last week. Travis Hunter at receiver is on injured reserve officially now, so he's going to be out. Yeah, it's a little gross. So at receiver, if Brian Thomas plays, you do not have to play him. That's my stance. You might have to if you don't have good options, but the Chargers are a tough matchup against receivers. They're the second toughest on the season. And Brian Thomas hasn't been good. And like I take every opportunity I can to say this. I drafted him over Jonathan Taylor in the league. So there's a chance he plays. He's not going to be 100%. He was limited at practice all week. He's dealing with a high ankle sprain. But what I'm seeing right now is that there's a good chance he plays. Limited at practice on Thursday. So I don't know, man. If he plays, the other receiver options there, Parker Washington and newly acquired Jacoby Myers. I don't want to say like Brian Thomas is going to come in and dominate, but it does kind of lower their floors. Parker Washington has been a really solid streaming receiver lately. I believe he's kind of banged up too with a hamstring. He did practice on Thursday, and it looks like he's going to play. If Brian Thomas is out, that makes me more confident in him as like a streaming option. You can still play him if Thomas plays, especially if he's limited, and just because, Brian Thomas hasn't been great. But Jacoby Myers being there also does kind of make it a little even grosser, even with Travis Hunter on injured reserve. You got 3 guys there that could be involved, and it's a tough matchup. Jacoby Myers, in his first game with the Jags, didn't play a ton of the snaps. Looks like a little under half. I was 3 for 41 on 3 targets, and I obviously, you expect that to go up. So, yeah, definitely a situation where you kind of have to monitor the injury reports. And then at tight end, Strange is still on IR. Hunter Long is out, so it's going to be like Johnny Munt and Quinton Morris, it looks like. And then, yeah, I'm not touching Trevor Lawrence with a 10-foot pole, unfortunately. I once drafted him in like the back of the first round in a 1-quarterback dynasty league, dude, because he was like this generational. He's gonna be so good. Yeah, it's not super working out. Not like we hoped, anyways. Let's move on. Green Bay Packers 5-3-1 at the New York Giants, who are 2-8. Just fired their coach, so I don't know. They've kind of blown some big leads, so I kind of get why. But also, from what I've heard, he was kind of the guy that was really vouching for them to draft Jackson Dart, and that seems to be the right decision. So it's interesting. I know it's been a little rough in his era there, but it seems like things were starting to turn around. They've been dealing with a lot of big injuries, and then to let him go now, it's like, I don't know. I probably would have let the season ride out, but yeah, speaking of Jackson Dart, he's going to be out at quarterback for the Giants. So Russell Wilson's going to get the start. Psych. No Russ. We got Jameis freaking Winston, dude. Jameis Winston getting the start. We love that for fantasy. Now, this isn't the ideal matchup for a Jameis game. The Packers are 7-point road favorites, and the over-under is only 42.5. Projects to be a game where the Packers, can kind of get a lead and just run the ball out, and it's kind of a boring, low-scoring game. But the NFL is crazy. Anything can happen, and especially when you have Jameis Winston on the other side, he's going to need to air it out. I'm not really looking to start him in a one-quarterback league still, but if you want to be crazy, you can play him. 2-quarterback league, I'm fine putting him in there. DFS, he's super cheap, unlike DraftKings. And yeah, he made the Browns receivers look good last year. Was that last year? Whenever that was. So Jerry Jeudy was like a league-winning receiver with him. So wish the matchup was better, but unfortunately, I should have also added this before I went on that rant. Receiving options are light for the Giants. So obviously Neighbors has been out for the season for a while, but now even Darius Slayton, who, was a guy you could potentially stream. He is out. The weather looks okay. It looks good. There is a little red alert for wind. It says 16 miles per hour. Once you start to get to that point, it could affect things. I wouldn't worry about it too much unless that picks up a little bit. So really, it's Wan'Dale Robinson as kind of the lone main receiving option there. After him, it's like Jalen Hyatt and Isaiah Hodgins. That's pretty much it. Gunnar Olszewski, I forgot how you say his name, but Wan'Dale Robinson I think is a solid play. He should just see plenty of volume. He's had at least 11 targets in 3 of the last 4 games. Not doing a ton with it, but with Jameis, I mean, he wouldn't surprise me if he sets his season high in targets with all the injuries and with Jameis there projected to be losing. His season high is 12 targets in week 7. So he's a solid wide receiver 2, I would say. And then at tight end, that kind of elevates Theo Johnson with the quarterback change. With all the injuries. Now, I don't want to say the quarterback change as if Theo Johnson had been doing bad with Jackson Dart, because he's actually looked pretty solid in especially the last couple weeks. 3 for 27 and a touchdown 2 weeks ago, and then last week, so 8 targets turned into 7 for 75. I love when a tight end can offer good reception and yardage totals to where they're not reliant on a touchdown. Because before last week, it looked like he was kind of a touchdown or bust type of guy. So he's playable in this game as a low tight end 1. I'm totally cool with that. But yeah, it's it should be interesting. And the Packers are a team that they've blown they lost the Browns and the Panthers at home. So you never know what team's going to show up, but generally speaking, their defense is pretty good. And then at running back, you got Tyrone Tracy, you got Devin Singletary. I don't really want to start either one. Tyrone Tracy last week was 14 carries for 71 yards on the ground, only 2 targets, 1 catch for 0 yards. What was Singletary's touches? Let me check here. So I thought we all kind of thought Tracy would be the clear guy after Scadaboo went down, unfortunately. And then the first week without Scadaboo, it looked like maybe Singletary was the guy you wanted. But then last week, it looked like it kind of shifted back to Tracy because, Singletary was only 8 for 20, 3 for 53 through the air. So, yeah, I'd rather play Tracy as a running back 3. I'd probably play with Pacheco out for the Chiefs. I'd probably play Kareem Hunt over Tracy. Still probably play Walker. Montgomery, Woody Marks, Rashad White. I'd probably play all those guys over Tyrone Tracy. Kind of in that tier. Yeah, disgusting. And then for the Packers, Jordan Love is playable, but he has shown that he has a low floor. The Giants are the 6th best matchup for quarterbacks on the year. But they are even a better matchup for running backs, giving up the 2nd most points to running backs. So the way it projects, which it never goes the way you think it seems like, but The Packers should be winning and running the ball. Josh Jacobs is projected to have a phenomenal game. He's a must-start running back 1. You're starting him every week, but I particularly like him this week. He's in a tier where he's too good at this point to make him like a start of the week, but I almost did it because it's like I love this spot for him, like top 5 type of guy. But especially with Jameis on the other side, you never know. But he is missing weapons. But Jordan Love is... I don't want to play him. It's weird because he's in a good spot, but I could just see him not being needed whatsoever. You know, so he's a quarterback 2, probably like a high quarterback 2. I'd probably play like Joe Flacco over him, Stafford, Caleb Williams. Him versus like Rodgers or Mariota is tough. You know, JJ McCarthy is tough. So he's kind of in that tier. He could disappear. And then a receiver, you know, it's gross since Tucker Kraft got, you know, suffered that season-ending injury. Theoretically, you would think that would open up more opportunities for someone. No receiver has really smashed at this point. I'd probably go Romeo Doubs. He left early last week with a chest injury, but he's been practicing in full, so he should be good to go. He's probably the first guy I would put up there. He was only 1 for 5 on 4 targets last week, but he left early. But the week before that, 10 targets, 7 for 91 in a gross game with the Panthers. The week before that, 6 targets. The week before that, 8. Week before that, 9. So he's probably the guy. He's probably the receiver you want there. Matthew Golden hasn't been getting it done. He's also questionable. He's been limited all week, it looks like. Oh, he practiced Friday. So, oh, wait. It says practice again on Friday. He was limited on Thursday. So he could play, but I don't want to start him by any means. And then Christian Watson is the other interesting guy. It's pretty much Dobbs and Watson. Since coming back from injury, we got added to the injury report on Thursday. Oh dear, that's so surprising that Christian Watson is dealing with a medical thing. Yeah, that makes me a little nervous. That makes me a little more nervous. If he were healthy, let's say, I think he'd be streamable. He's had 4 targets each of his first 3 games back. From week 8 on, turned into 4 for 85, 2 for 58, and 2 for 45. So he's making some big plays. You know, if the big play doesn't hit, then you're really disappointed, and he hasn't had like a touchdown or anything. But, you know, he's like a wide receiver 3-4 if he's healthy, which it looks like he's not, according to that report that I just saw. I didn't hear he must have got added pretty late. Christian Watson, he's expected to play. He's the type of player where it's like I'm not really wanting to risk injury with a guy like that. Like he's not like a locked-in starter as it is. So, and then Luke Musgrave is obviously the starter with Tucker Kraft on IR. So the last couple of weeks, 3 targets each week. He went 3 for 23 last week, 3 for 34 the week before. It was a tough matchup with the Eagles last week, so someone maybe more to like see how he does rather than play him, but worth watching. This game should be fun. Pittsburgh Steelers at 3-6. Oh, sorry. Completely lied. Cincinnati Bengals at 3-6 on the road against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are 5-4. So, Joe Burrow might be coming back, it looks like. I think it's going to depend on the Bengals' record. Like, if they're completely out of it, I don't think they'll be as likely to bring him back. But I think this is a game the Bengals can win. The Steelers are 5.5-point home favorites, but there's a 48.5-point over-under. Like I said earlier, this game went nuclear last time they met up. 20-mile-per-hour winds, according to this NFL weather thing. So, you know, if it's bad, then you might have to adjust your expectations. But Shamar Stewart and Trey Hendrickson are out at defensive end for the Bengals. So we like that for fantasy. Now, if you want Burrow to come back and you want the Bengals to win, that hurts those odds. But Samaje Perine, backup running back for the Bengals, is also out, so that makes Chase Brown maybe slightly safer. Not that he wasn't a good play already, but and then for the Steelers, Darius Slay is going to be out at cornerback. So that's a big injury. Their defense has been looking better. Looks like they're going to be missing a couple linebackers, Holcomb and Highsmith. Slay, like I said. So their defense it looked really bad at points during the year. Last couple weeks, they've looked a little bit better. So I don't know what to expect, but I think this game is going to be fun. So on the Steelers side, Jaylen Warren is a great start. He's my running back start of the week, or one of my 2 running back starts of the week. So I love him as like a borderline running back 1 this week. DK Metcalf, he's been super disappointing, not getting the targets that you want, which is weird from an Aaron Rodgers wide receiver 1, because he's historically hyper targets like, his 1. They traded draft capital for him. They gave him this huge contract, and yeah, his season high in targets is 9, and other than that, he's had 7 targets like 3 times. Yeah, last 2 weeks, 3 for 35. Week before that, 2 for 6. In week 7 against the Bengals, only 5 targets in the same matchup, turned into 3 for 50, no touchdowns. So he's touchdown dependent at this point. And of course, the one time I benched him was against my Vikings, where he went 5 for 126 and a touchdown. But even in that game, he had like he was used super early. He had an 80-yard like slant crossing route that he took to the house for an 80-yard touchdown. And he still finished with 5 for 126. Like, he was involved super early, had an 80-yard touchdown, and then didn't really like do much. Obviously, if you have an 80-yard touchdown, you're going to have a good game in the end. But it's a great matchup for all positions. So there's a chance. I mean, he's a talented player. It's the best matchup for running backs. It's a middling matchup for wide receivers, but you just like, they're not a good defense. Like, especially with missing Hendrickson. Like, I think, this could definitely be a game where like Jonnu Smith gets involved. I think in that, if I remember correctly, wasn't that a game where like Jonnu Smith, Pat Freiermuth, and Darnell Washington had touchdowns? Am I remembering that right? Where the tight ends all had a touchdown? Let me see. I gotta pull that up. Yeah. Freiermuth had 2 okay, he had 2 touchdowns, and Jonnu Smith had another touchdown, and then Darnell Washington had a touchdown. So all 4 of Aaron Rodgers' touchdowns went to tight ends, while Metcalf was 3 for 50. Oh my gosh. You can't make that up. Maybe Calvin Austin or Roman Wilson gets a touchdown. It's disappointing. But you can play Metcalf as like a low wide receiver 2, I would say. Like, I'd play him over guys like Dobbs. Wan'Dale Robinson is a safer play than Metcalf. If you wanted to play Robinson over Metcalf, I wouldn't blame you. But like, probably play Metcalf over Juwan Jennings with Pearsall coming back. But I mean, Jennings, I don't know, could do better. Like, I'd play him over Debo. Yeah, but like, I would have said to play Diggs over Metcalf. Adunze, he's kind of been inconsistent too, but you probably play Adunze. Yeah. Ugh. Sad. Rodgers is playable at quarterback, streamable. Not a must start, but he had 4 touchdowns last time they played. Not going to necessarily happen again, but he's in the high quarterback 2 range. And then for the Bengals side of things, Joe Flacco, I'm willing to fire him up. It seems like every week I'm kind of waiting for it to like the shoe to drop, or whatever the expression is. And the Steelers defense has looked better lately, but they got a lot of injuries, and the Bengals offense has looked tremendous. Like, Joe Flacco has been astoundingly good since taking over as the Bengals starter. So he's a quarterback 1, like low quarterback 1. He's got upside. He just always has a floor just because he has no mobility. He's a statue in the pocket. And yeah. Chase Brown at running back. is someone I'm interested in playing. He's had an interesting. He was my guy, and it looked like a really bad call, but he's been, you know, once Burrow was out, he didn't have a chance to do anything because the offense was terrible. But now that Flacco's there, Chase Brown has actually been doing well for fantasy. He's like a high running back 2 this week, I would say. In week 7 when they played, that was kind of like his first, like, okay, he's back type of game. He went 11 for 108 on the ground. 4 targets, only turned into 2 for -8, which isn't great, but am I reading this right? Did he have 14 targets last week? Is that a real stat? He's been great with Flacco. So I would be looking to play him in most cases. Like, I'm in a 10-team league where it's like I might not be able to squeeze him in. It's like I picked up Rico, I have Harvey, Jameson Williams is kind of having a resurgence, so I got to make a tough decision there. I got Adunze where it's like, do I play him or do I play one of those other guys? So that's kind of the decision where I'm at, but I need to verify this. Did he have 14 targets? Is that a real stat? Can I please see his stats? Where are they? Let's see. Targets. 14. Wow. Turned into 8 for 75. I mean, that's absurd. I mean, probably not going to do that again, but maybe. And that was actually 2 weeks ago. I think I said last week. They had a bye week last week. So week 9. Yeah, he's a solid running back too. And then Jamar Chase, fire him up every week. The Steelers are still the second best matchup on the year. They've been playing better though. And then Higgins is also a really, really good start. He was almost my start of the week. He's got enough volatility where I was like, you know, and the Steelers haven't really been giving it up as much as they were. So you could see Higgins kind of not do much. And I didn't want to be the guy that suggested a player on TikTok and then he goes out and has 6 yards, kind of like I did with DK Metcalf, who literally had 6 yards when I made him a start of the week. But I would be starting him almost everywhere. He's a high upside wide receiver too. And he's been great with Flacco. Like he's been awesome. Like he's a good player. Like, yeah. So last week, Higgins was 7 for 121 and 2 targets. Not last week, sorry. The week before the bye, week 9. Saw 9 targets, turned into 7 for 121 and 2 touchdowns. The week before that, he only had 2 targets, caught one of them, went for a 44-yard touchdown. So you got lucky there. And then the week before that, against the Steelers with Joe Flacco, 10 targets, 6 for 96 and a touchdown. So, and then even the week before that, I think Flacco was with the team then because, yeah, against the Packers, but that was when did they win that game in Green Bay? Dude, have the Packers, hold on. What is with the Packers? I got a few things going on here. Let my brain process. So the Packers lost to Cleveland in Cleveland. They did beat the Bengals. Okay, in week 6. Gotcha. Interesting. Why do I remember them? Why do I remember the Packers losing that game? Oh, you know what it was? Oh my God. That's so funny. It's because Joe Flacco was on the Browns in week 3, beat them, then went to the Bengals, played the Packers again just 3 weeks later and lost. Okay. Gotcha. So who played in week? So in week 6, Higgins was 5 for 62 on 8 targets. Okay. So serviceable. He's been, yeah. I spent way too much time talking about T. Higgins. I apologize. I kind of went on a little rabbit hole thing there. And then, yeah, that's fire up Chase Brown, fire up Jamar Chase, fire up Higgins, fire up Flacco. And we move on. Did I mention the wind? There could be wind in this game. Did I say that? I think I did. If I didn't say that, I meant to. There could be wind. So that could limit the passing, but I don't know, man. I feel like every time I like buy into the weather thing, it doesn't matter. It could be like literally they could say like, oh, there's gonna be like 30-mile-per-hour gusts of wind with heavy rainfall, and I'll like not play someone and they'll literally be fine. So I don't know. I don't know. Moving on. We got the Chicago Bears at 6-3 traveling to play my Minnesota Vikings. Skol, baby. Skol. Now, with that being said, 40.5 point over under. We like that. The Vikings are 3-point home favorites. I was a little surprised to hear that. The Vikings have been a really tough team to figure out. They just beat the Detroit Lions a couple weeks ago. So, love that. Love that. And then last week, lost to the Ravens. So since our bye week, our schedule has literally been the Eagles, the Chargers, the Lions, and the Ravens, who are now healthy. That's a tough draw. That's a tough draw. We went 1-3 in that span, only beating Detroit, in Detroit. I did not think we would beat Baltimore just because they're healthy and they need these wins with Lamar Jackson back to make the playoffs. So, taking a look at injuries, there's a few things to note here. So, for the Bears, Jaylen Johnson at cornerback is going to be out. That's kind of the big absence, I would say, for the defense. Also, it says TJ Edwards out at middle linebacker. Is he their starter? He's listed as their starter on here, so I think I don't really play Madden anymore, so I'm not super familiar with like every single player in the league like I used to be, but he's out. He's out. So, and then for the Vikings, Ryan Kelly got put on injured reserve with a concussion. Is that right? Really? Interesting. Huh. Anyways, Jonathan Grenard at linebacker. That's a big injury. I remember he got hurt in the last game, and I was like, "Ooh, that didn't look fun." So he's one of our better defensive players at linebacker. So where do we start here? Should we start with the Vikings because they're just a superior team in every way? Vikings did beat the Bears earlier in week 1. It was a crazy game where we were getting shellacked, and then JJ McCarthy led a crazy comeback at the end. McCarthy is playable, very volatile, player to rely on at this point. But I personally think he's looked pretty good. There's been times where he hasn't looked good, obviously, and it's not like he's come out and been like a star. But I think there's definitely a chance he's not it. I'm not sitting here banging the table for McCarthy, but I think there's a chance he's good, and I'm still hopeful. So, and the Bears are a great matchup. They're the third best matchup on the year for quarterbacks, and he's got the weapons. So I'm cool playing McCarthy if you don't have like a good option. I'd probably play him over Jordan Love. I probably would. I'd play him over like Mariota, I would say. Mariota and like is probably safer. Rodgers is probably would you play Rodgers or McCarthy? Ooh. In a dome at home, I might go McCarthy, but you could ask me in like an hour and I could say I could make a different decision. Running back, almost made him a start of the week, Aaron Jones. Since he's come back from injury, he's kind of taken over the backfield over Jordan Mason, who didn't really look great as the starter when Jones was out. So Aaron Jones, he's very, 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 very playable as like a running back 2. He's been banged up, but he's off the injury report. It looks like should play on Sunday. He's looked good and he's taken over as the kind of the running back you want there. But even like the last 2 weeks, his carries have been 9 and 9. targets were 6 and 2. So last week, 9 for 47 and a touchdown on the ground. His 6 targets turned into 3 for 22 through the air. And the week before that, against a tough Detroit defense, 9 for 78, caught his 2 targets for 20 yards. So still only what? If you count each target as an opportunity, 15 total opportunities and 11 the week before. You like that. Week 1 against the Bears, he was 8 for 23 on the ground, but 3 for 44 and a touchdown through the air on 3 targets. So again, not like a must start, but at that level of running back, I think he's in a great position to kind of smash, especially if this game hits the over and if he's involved in the passing game. Jefferson is a must start each and every week. Bears are a good matchup as it is, and they're missing Jaylen Johnson. Why am I not seeing his name on here? There he is. He's on IR. Oh, has he been on IR for a while? I can't remember. Or did they just put him on? Oh, I might have lied to you guys. Jaylen Johnson is listed as questionable. It says he's on injured reserve, so I thought he was out, but that's right. He got put on a while ago, didn't he? I thought so. I was kind of confused. That's why if I seemed like I was awkwardly pausing, because I was probably like, wait, what's happening? So his window is open, his 21-day practice window, and he could return. Okay. He's a really good corner. So you're still playing Justin Jefferson as a wide receiver 1, but interesting. That's interesting. And then Jordan Addison, I'm actually interested in here. Last week it wasn't great, but he's had some really good games as the wide receiver 2 there since coming back from his suspension. The last couple weeks it hasn't been great, but last week he saw 11 targets, only 3 for 35, but not a must start at all. But you can play him as like a high wide receiver 3. Like I'd play him over Sutton, for example, which might be crazy. But Sutton could have a bounce back game, but I don't know. I'd probably lean Addison. I'd play him over Shakir for upside. I'd probably play him over Debo. I'd probably play Jameson Williams over Addison. Yeah, I think I would. I'd play Jameson Williams. At McMillan, probably a safer floor than Addison, but Addison he's a touchdown guy, and McMillan just isn't getting in the end zone. So that's a toss up. That one's really close. That's like the exact tier he's in. Jalen Naylor was actually the receiver that had the big game. Naylor. Yeah, Naylor. He had like 100 yards, didn't he, last week? I'm not chasing that. If you follow the Vikings, he's been a guy on our team for a while who can make plays. I'm not chasing his 5. He had 6 targets, turned into 5 for 124 and a touchdown. He actually has quite a few games with like 3 to 5 targets on the year. Actually, every game he's had 3 to 5 targets except for week 8, where he had 1, turned into 0 for 0. Not chasing it. Deep DFS type of thing, sure, but I wouldn't be like, oh, he's going to break out. Because, yeah, he's got 2 super talented receivers ahead of him. But could make a big play. You never know. It's football. Hawkinson is irrelevant at this point at tight end. I'm not starting him. It's just been... It's weird. I don't know if it's like an injury thing where like the injuries have caught up with him. He's still only 28. I would imagine he's still like a good player. Obviously, we don't have like Kirk Cousins anymore. Who, people love to hate on Kirk Cousins, but he's a good quarterback who can get the ball to his receivers. So it's like, we don't have that anymore. Not saying McCarthy's not good, but he's essentially a rookie, and rookie quarterbacks usually don't supply fantasy production to like multiple weapons. So if you told me like a year or 2 from now, Hawkinson is back in like the conversation for like a good tight end that you want, I wouldn't be surprised, but the way things are going now, I'm not touching him. For the Bears, Caleb Williams is startable. He's always a little bit volatile, however you say that. The Vikings have a pretty good defense, but I think Caleb Williams is going to be able to like scramble and make stuff happen where he'll probably have a decent game. In week 1, He had 210 yards and a touchdown on 35 attempts. Had 6 for 58 and a touchdown on the ground. So he's a low quarterback one. At running back, DeAndre Swift is playable. Again, the Vikings are a pretty tough matchup. Swift is off the injury report. He missed some time and he was on the injury report, but he practiced in full a couple of times to end the week. And Kyle Monangai at running back is going to still be involved, but last week when Swift came back, he kind of reclaimed his role as the guy. 13 carries for 80 yards, 8 targets, only turned into 5 for 18, but you love that involvement. So Swift is a playable running back 2. And I wouldn't want to play Monangai. He was great when Swift was out, but last week, only 7 carries. He did get in the end zone, 28 yards and a touchdown, but I don't want to chase that touchdown. That week where Swift was out, he was awesome. He had over 30 opportunities, no touchdowns, but still was near just under 200 total yards. That was an awesome game. But yeah. And then at receiver, I'm a little sketched out. I would play Rome Odunze as a wide receiver 2. He was on the injury report, but it looks like he's good to go. He has been very, very up and down. In week 1 against the Vikings, he saw 9 targets. It only turned into 6 for 37. Got in the end zone, luckily. Last week, after kind of so since their bye in week 5, so week 6 on, he was 2 for 32, 2 for 31, no touchdowns. Then 7 for 114, no touchdowns. Then the next week, goosed, no catches, only 3 targets in that crazy game with the Bengals. And then last week he bounced back, 6 for 86 and a touchdown, so on 10 targets. So we know he has a low floor, but he does have a lot of upside. And this game has a 48.5 point over-under. So he's still a wide receiver 2. I could see a world where it doesn't go well. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not saying bench him. I'd play him over Metcalf. But like I'd play Higgins over Odunze, I would think. For context. And then other than that, I don't super want to play any other receivers. Yeah. I don't think I want to play DJ Moore, who's off the injury report after dealing with a bit of a shoulder thing. Don't want to play Zacchaeus. Don't want to play Luther Burden, really. Yeah. It's weird. There's just too many. There's too many weapons. I think the last 2 years with the Bears, it's like every year I go into the season and I'm like, they have too many guys, and then I feel like people are kind of like blindsided, like, whoa, none of these guys are that great, and it's like, well, yeah, they have they have so many guys to like throw the ball to. If you want to take a shot on Colston Loveland, you can, as like a tight end 2 with upside. He had the big game, 6 for 118 and 2 touchdowns 2 weeks ago. Last week, 4 for 55, if you know, on 4 targets. So, tight end is gross and he has some upside, so you can play him. Fine with that. I'm cool with that. Yeah, let's get out of this game. Let's move on. Oh gosh. Blech. Houston Texans at 4-5, traveling to play the Tennessee Titans at 1-8. This game is nasty, gross. 37.5 point over under, which is just insane. 5.5 point favorites are the Houston Texans. CJ Stroud is out again at quarterback for Houston, so Davis Mills is going to get the start. Now, we saw him light up the Jags last week. I believe he was the quarterback 1. I don't expect that to happen again. I think the Texans can win this game with defense and running the ball, but if you want to take a shot in DFS, go for it. That's about it. That is pretty much the only scenario I would be touching Davis Mills. At running back, it seems like Woody Marks has taken over. Now, we've seen this before where it's like, oh, Woody Marks is the guy. And then the next week, Nick Chubb comes out and gets more involved. But it really feels like they're actually going to give him the backfield. 80% of snaps last week, I think, is what I saw. 14 for 63 and a touchdown. 3 targets, 2 for 18. He's been double-digit carries each of the last 4 weeks since the bye week. So he's actually a really, really solid start. Titans are a great matchup. 3rd best on the season. Tied for 3rd best. And the game script projects well if the Texans are winning. So I'm not playing Nick Chubb. If they're winning by a ton, maybe Chubb gets, involved as well. But yeah, last week, 5 for 47, 1 for 5 through the air. I might drop him in one of my leagues. I just know if I drop him, he's going to have 10 for 56 and a touchdown, and then he's going to get picked up. And I'm going to be like, dang it. Yeah, Nico Collins is still a low end wide receiver 1, maybe a high wide receiver 2. I would be playing him even without Stroud. I believe last week he was still, season high in targets. 7 for 136 on 15 targets. Yeah, I mean, you're playing him. Other than that, at receiver, Higgins, Kirk, Noel, whatever the heck his name is, not really looking to play anyone in this receiver room other than Nico. And then Dalton Schultz at tight end, he was almost the start of the week for me. He was on the injury report. It looked like he might not play, but he's off the injury report now. He was dealing with a shoulder injury. He returned to practice on Friday. So I think he's a really solid play. He's actually low-key been pretty good. I think he's a low tight end 1. Since their bye week in week 6, so week 7 on, 10 targets, 9 for 98. Then the next week, only 3 targets, 2 for 24. We don't like that. But then the next week, 6 for 77 on 8 targets. And then last week, 7 for 53 and a touchdown, 11 targets. I think he's a very playable guy, especially in PPR. And the tight end position is gross. So I think he offers a solid floor, actually. And then for the Titans, I don't think I want to play anybody. I really don't think I want to play a single soul on this team. Their offense is terrible. The Texans have arguably the best defense in the league. They're giving up the fewest points to quarterbacks on the year. Cam Ward has been terrible. I'm not going to play him in this matchup. Tony Pollard, I guess, is someone you can theoretically play as him and Tajay Spears splitting work in a brutal matchup against the Texans. They're running back 3s at best. I would play Tracy, Kareem Hunt, Charbonnet, and Walker, both Seattle backs. Them versus Monangai is a tough call. DeMarcado with that uncertainty is a tough call. So that's kind of the tier they're in. I'd play Woody Marks, obviously, on the other side. And then at receiver, again, Texans are a brutal matchup. Calvin Ridley is listed as questionable. And he was bad even before he got hurt. Looks like there's a chance he plays. I'm not putting him in the lineup. If you want to pick him up and see what happens, go for it. But not playing him. Ayamaner and DK they flashed a little bit. Where long term, in Dynasty, I think they're worth holding on to, but not remotely wanting to play them. And then at tight end, I'm not playing Chig Okonkwo. I love Chig. I think he's I could see a world where at some point in his career he becomes a playable guy, but not in this situation and certainly not in this matchup. So moving on. Carolina Panthers at 5-5. taking on the Atlanta Falcons, who are 3-6, which kind of surprised me early in the week when I saw their record. They seem like a better team than that, but clearly they are not. They are not a better team than that. They're actually exactly that. Where do we even start here? I guess let's start with the Panthers. Well, actually, let's start with the line. Falcons are favored by 3.5 at home. The over-under is kind of gross, 41.5 points, which we don't like. On the Panthers side of the ball, I'm only starting 2 players. It's Rico Dowdle, who is my start of the week. Great matchup. And Tet McMillan. The Falcons are a smash matchup for running backs. A little tougher against receivers, tougher matchup, but Tet McMillan is a solid play, but he passes the eye test, but in this matchup with Bryce Young as your quarterback, it has, I don't expect huge things. I think long term he's going to be a great player, but yeah, it hasn't been what we hoped for. He has 2 touchdowns on the year. They both came in one game against the Cowboys, so they don't even really count. And he only had 3 for 29 in that game. So he's like a high wide receiver 3, low wide receiver 2. And that's it. That's pretty much it. I'm not playing Chuba, obviously. He's no longer a factor. Don't want to play Leggett or Coker. No tight ends that I want to play. So for the Falcons, obviously, needless to say. Oh, I forgot to say, by the way, that Titans game has a chance of rain. I meant to say that, not to get sidetracked, but they do have a chance of rain. Obviously, you're playing Bijan Robinson as a smash play, just so that Tyler Algier can vulture some goal line touchdowns. Drake London is questionable, which is super annoying. Very, very annoying. For what it's worth, I don't really want to play Michael Penix. I don't know if anyone out there wants to. Maybe in a 2-quarterback league, if you got injuries or, you had Danny Dimes on bye, then maybe. But yeah, Drake London is questionable. If he is good to go, obviously you're playing him. But yeah, illness and back. He practiced on Thursday and Friday. Looks like he should play, is what I'm reading. So obviously you play him, and then Kyle Pitts is a solid tight end play. He's very involved, sees a lot of targets. One of the highest reception guys at the tight end position. Hasn't seen a ton of upside this year. Only 1 touchdown, but you can play him as a low tight end 1. And yeah, I don't want to play Darnell Mooney. Tyler Algier himself, who I mentioned, I think he is playable in a pinch. I don't want to play him. He's more of a running back 3 at best, I would say. Last week he was 11 for 57 and 2 touchdowns. So he's weird. He has some games 1 carry, 4, 2. But then other games he has carry counts of he's 2 games of 16 targets, 11, 10, 10. So if you were to tell me he's going to get double-digit carries and have a decent shot at a goal line carry, he could be someone that pans out. So if you're in a deep league, or if you want to if you need a cheap running back in daily fantasy, you could play him and hope he falls in the end zone. Since their bye week in week 5, he's been ping-ponging touchdown weeks. So touchdown, no touchdown, touchdown, no touchdown, 2 touchdowns last week. For what it's worth, in week 3 against the same Panthers team, he was 1 for 4, 2 targets, 1 reception. Did he leave early or no? It says he played 9% of snaps. I don't recall, but just a name to keep on your dome. This is the other game. When I said, hey, this Buccaneers Bills game might be the best game of the week, most important game of the week, I thought to myself, well, there is that other game. And that is the Seattle Seahawks traveling to take on the Rams, the LA Rams, both at 7-2. Over under is 48.5 points. We like that. The Rams are favored by 3.5 at home. Should be an awesome game. I'm very much so looking forward to this game. So last week, Darnold, we'll start with the Seahawks at quarterback. He's a playable quarterback 2. Not in a single quarterback league. I'm not looking to play him. Rams have a good defense, but last week, I think he threw the ball like 12 times. Is that? Yeah, 12 times. He was 10 for 12. 10 of 12. Like, yeah, they got like 2 defensive touchdowns against the Cardinals and didn't have to do anything. JSN at receiver, obviously you play him as like a must. He's like arguably the best fantasy receiver in the league right now. Cooper Kupp revenge game. Cooper Kupp taking on his old team. No Torrey Horton in this game, so maybe Cooper Kupp or the newly acquired Rashid Shaheed makes some plays here. Kupp was dealing with a hamstring and wrist injury, but he practiced all week, so he'll be good to go. But last week only 2 targets, turned into 2 for 74, but probably not looking to start Cooper Kupp. There is the revenge game narrative, but Rashid Shaheed in his first game with the Seahawks, 1 target for 3 yards, caught it for 3 yards, says 34% of snaps. You expect that to go up. So yeah, it's pretty much JSN and log out though. And then the running back room is gross. Kenneth Walker versus Charbonnet. I would probably lean towards Charbonnet because he seems to be the goal line back. Kenneth Walker's always capable of ripping off a big run, but I would rather play the guy that has higher odds of a touchdown. The Rams are the toughest matchup for running backs on the season. Last week, Charbonnet was 14 for 83 and a touchdown. He regularly is in the double digits for carries. So is Kenneth Walker, but he's not getting the touchdown opportunities. Both are playable. They're very close. But in this matchup, they're both more like high running back 3, low running back, probably just high running back 3s, honestly. And yeah, that's it for the Seahawks. For the Rams, Stafford might be the MVP of the league, which is crazy. I don't think anyone predicted that. But his touchdown rate is insane. They brought Devontae Adams in at receiver, and I think that really changed everything for how this offense works and Stafford's touchdown opportunities. Seattle also has a good defense, but with how Stafford has been playing, I think you start him as long as Devontae Adams is good to go. He's a little banged up, but last I heard he should play. And yeah, Stafford, like, he had one good year with the Rams, and then every other year it's been kind of like a situation where they get near the goal line and they just hand the ball to Kyren Williams and they run in every touchdown. This year they're more likely to throw the ball on the goal line, and Devontae Adams, he's a touchdown machine right now. So, with a guy like Stafford, it could always go away if you don't get those touchdowns. But he's had, his last 2 weeks, he's had 4 touchdowns by a week. The week before that, 5 touchdowns. Week before that, only 1. But then before that, 3, 3, 2, 2. And then only 1 in week 1 against the Texans. So he's still a quarterback 1, probably a lower quarterback 1. Him versus like Dak and Caleb Williams is an interesting conversation. Mahomes against Denver, if that game turns out to be gross. Like, I'd play Herbert over Stafford. Lamar, Hurts. I would have played Drake May over Stafford. Josh Allen. But yeah, Stafford I'd probably play over like Flacco. I'd probably play him over Baker. Would for sure play him over McCarthy and Love and Rodgers. So, but he, it's all touchdowns. Like if he doesn't get the touchdowns, it's not gonna work. I actually played Stafford in my dynasty league. I have Hurts, but when was Hurts bye week? I've had Stafford for a little bit in this dynasty league, and every time I've ever needed to play him, he's done bad. But yeah, I played him against the Saints when he had 4 touchdowns. Let's go. At running back, Kyron Williams obviously is every week like running back 1, high running back 2. Again, the Seahawks are a tough defense, but you're playing Kyron in most cases unless you have like a stacked, like 10-team roster. Like if you played Travion Henderson over him, good for you. Maybe if you drafted Javonte or Jaylen Warren late and you want to play them over him, then I'm fine with that. I don't know if that's necessarily the right thing, but it's that's pretty much the only case where maybe you wouldn't. And then obviously you're starting Puka Nacua and then Devontae Adams, both at wide receiver, are both auto starts. Devontae Adams was dealing with that oblique. He was limited on Thursday. This says they don't know what his practice status was on Friday. How do you not know? What? I'm reading that he's probably going to be good to go. So if he plays, I'm starting him. And then, not playing any tight ends. And then, let's see. Another interesting game in the same division. You got the San Fran 49ers at 64. Traveling to take on the Arizona Cardinals at 3-6. Let's see. So there's a few things to unpack here. So Jacoby Brissett is going to get the start again for the Cardinals. He's been playing very well with Kyler Murray hurt. I'm doing quotations for anyone listening to just audio. He is obviously hurt to some extent, but this game does have a 48.5 point over-under, by the way, with the 49ers 3-point road favorites. Marvin Harrison at receiver is going to be out for the Cardinals. So let's just break down the Cardinals completely here, and then we'll move to the 49ers with injuries and everything. So that does hurt Jacoby Brissett a little bit with not having Marv. I know Brissett has had good games with Marvin Harrison not necessarily having big games in all of those, but having Marv on the field, you have to give attention to him because he can make big plays. So without Marvin Harrison, Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch, they get a little bit of a bump if you want to look for like a nasty play. I'd probably lean Michael Wilson as like a wide receiver 4. Greg Dortch, I'm not really interested in playing, but very deep league, maybe you can play him. Those are both okay options in like DFS because they're going to be pretty cheap. And then Xavier Weaver, who I remember I saw him on the field at one point. Not someone I'm playing, but he's probably like their wide receiver 3. And the real story here is Trey McBride. He should smash. The 49ers defense is not very good. On the season, they're kind of middle of the pack, but they've had some injuries, and it's kind of unraveling a little bit defensively for them. So Trey McBride is probably the best start at the position at tight end, and he should see a ton of targets. He's been just awesome with and without Jacoby, but even his last 4 weeks, he's just been on fire. Last week, 13 targets, 9 for 127 and a touchdown. The week before that, 5 for 55 and a touchdown on 9 targets. Bye week. And then the 2 weeks before that, 13 targets, 10 for 74 and 2 touchdowns. The week before that, 11 targets, 8 for 72 and a touchdown. So he's had a touchdown in each of his last 4 games, which is funny because last year, his whole thing was he didn't score touchdowns. And obviously we knew that was a fluke. For the 49ers, so injury-wise, they're still missing a ton of like defensive players, and Ayuk isn't looking like he's going to come back super soon at receiver. Brock Purdy, though, should be back at quarterback. So I think he's someone that, he's going to matter. So Mac Jones has been filling in very well as a starter, I would say, for the 49ers. But Brock Purdy is back, and I probably wouldn't play him in this matchup, maybe in a 2-quarterback league. Or, I don't know his price on DraftKings, but if he's like cheap because he's been out, maybe you could take a shot. But I think that's good news for the offense. And Ricky Pearsall at receiver is also back after missing way more time than I think anyone thought. So the receiver room is a little more crowded now, but it's Ricky Pearsall and Jawan Jennings as the two guys you want there. Jennings has been picking it up a little bit. I think he was. We know he was banged up and injured. I think that was limiting his play a little bit. But the last couple weeks, 6 for 71 and a touchdown. The week before that, 4 for 41 and a touchdown. He's a streamable receiver. I'd probably play like Jameson Williams over him, Wandale. Him versus like Romeo Dobbs is a tough call. I'd probably play him over like Debo. Him versus Addison is kind of a toss-up. So that's sort of the tier that they're in, or that Jawan Jennings is in. And then Ricky Pearsall, it looks like he's good to go. So, there is always the risk that he re-injures himself, but it seems like the team was pretty cautious. Either the team has been overly cautious or his injury was like worse than we thought, because he's been out for quite a while. I mean, when is the last time he played? Let me see. Week 4? He's played since week 4. We're going into week 11. And they didn't put him on IR, did they? I think he's just been out every week. So he's immediately someone you can plug in and play. Yeah, I think he's probably he's a wide receiver 3, maybe a wide receiver 2. I'm interested to see how the targets get distributed, but I know before he got hurt, he was dominating. I think he led the league in receiving yards, if I remember correctly, or he was up there. So he's very playable. Like, I have him versus Debo. Like I said, I'm probably going to play Pearsall, especially because I have to play Debo in one league. So it's like I'm kind of hedging a little bit. And then obviously Christian McCaffrey should dominate. And George Kittle at tight end. Since he came back from injury, it started a little slow. He actually got goosed in his first game back, but since then it's been better. Last week was his best game of the year. 9 targets, caught all of them for 84 yards and a touchdown. So Kittle is a top 3 option. Like, I'd play him over my start of the week, Gadsden. Let's move on. The Kansas City Chiefs at 5-4 on the road against the Broncos, who are 8-2, a disgusting 8-2. This game has a gross 44.5 point over under. The Chiefs are favored by 3.5 on the road. Pat Surtain out for the Broncos. J.K. Dobbins out for the Broncos. Pacheco out for the Chiefs. Those are kind of the big injuries. So with Pacheco out, Kareem Hunt gets the start for the Chiefs. He's very playable. Broncos have a good defense, but if he has the backfield mostly to himself, with Brashard Smith getting a little involved, he's a touchdown dependent flex option, and he often gets in the end zone in these situations. So he's very, very, very playable. Not a lot of bye weeks, so you don't have to play him, but could definitely be a thing where it's like, you have like DeAndre Swift against the Vikings, and he has like a lot of carries, doesn't do much with it, doesn't score. And then you have Kareem Hunt on your bench, get like, 12 carries for 40 yards, but he gets 2 touchdowns. And you're like, dang it. And you lose because of it. So I'm not saying, Hunt is for sure going to score 2 touchdowns, but that's kind of the type of play he is. Patrick Mahomes, if you have him, you're probably playing him. The Broncos are a tough defense, one of the toughest against quarterbacks in the league. But yeah, this game could be disgusting. We saw last week against the Raiders, just disgusting football to watch between the Broncos and the Raiders. But the Chiefs are obviously a better offense, and they might get there. So they Chiefs are hard to read, but if you have Mahomes, you're probably playing him. If you have like Herbert, you drafted him late for some reason, I'd probably play Herbert. If you had Drake May, I would have played Drake May. It probably wasn't the right call. But at receiver, Rashee Rice is a stud. He is a guy that you play pretty much no matter what. He's a wide receiver 1 every week. This isn't the best matchup. The Broncos are actually the toughest matchup for receivers on the season. But no Surtain helps, and you're playing him regardless. Like, it's, you know, it's not like, oh, Surtain's out, I can play Rashee Rice. Like, no, you're playing him no matter what. And then other than that, for the Chiefs, I don't really want to play Xavier Worthy or Hollywood Brown or Juju or Thornton. Travis Kelce, he's been very solid, and I would be, if you have him, again, you're probably playing him. He's been good. I mean, you know, I was a little worried with Rashee Rice back, he would fall off, but, you know, as far as tight ends go, he's been really solid. Like, very much so. So he's a low to mid tight end 1. I'd play him over like Pitts, Otten, Goddard. I'd probably play Ferguson, Jake Ferguson of the Cowboys. I'd probably play Gadsden, but yeah, that's kind of the area he's in. He's between those two tiers. And then for the Broncos, Bo Nix cost me a win last week. Played him over Baker. Whoops. Literally lost directly because of that. And the Chiefs they have a good defense. So could definitely see this not be good for the Broncos offense that already is kind of inconsistent. I don't really want to play Bo Nix outside of like a 2 quarterback league. At receiver, Cortland Sutton has been super disappointing. Troy Franklin has been out targeting him lately. You can still play Sutton. I know it's all doom and gloom, and he's been bad the last, 3 weeks. I mean, 3 for 24 against the Raiders, only 4 targets. The week before that against Houston, 6 targets. He only caught 1 of them for 30 yards. Thank goodness it went for a touchdown. And the week before that against Dallas, he was my start of the week. Only 6 targets, went for 4 for 67. So he hasn't had like a truly like inspiring game since the week before that against the Giants, where he saw 10 targets and went 6 for 87. He's had a few of these disappearing acts this year. It can happen. I wouldn't auto bench him. The matchup and the targets are not ideal, so you can if you have better options, but I wouldn't like bench him just for anybody, like Jerry Jeudy coming off. Watch me regret saying this, but like Jerry Jeudy finally having a good game, I wouldn't necessarily like, bench Cortland Sutton for Jeudy, like that type of thing. I wouldn't be that drastic, but Sutton is definitely more of like a flex wide receiver 3 type of play this week. And then Troy Franklin, I don't know what to do with him. I mean, he's also in the wide receiver 3 range. He's been seeing more targets than Sutton. His last 4 weeks, 9, 10, 8, and 10 targets. And he's gotten in the end zone 3 of the last 4 weeks. So, I mean, you can take a shot. You can take the shot if you want. But it's, I don't know. It's kind of gross. And then at running back, J.K. Dobbins is out. The lead running back for the Broncos is out. So rookie RJ Harvey is going to get elevated opportunity here. The Chiefs are a tough defense. Game script isn't great, but Harvey should have an expanded role. I think Tyler, how do you say it? Is it Bidet? Tyler Bidet? Is that how you say his name? I think he'll be involved. It's not going to be just all RJ Harvey, in my opinion, but I think Harvey is going to be the lead back and see like, season highs and like snap percentage and probably, total opportunities. And he's flashed. So it's not the best matchup. Just because Dobbins is out, I don't think he's a must start. I know a lot of times, like when a backup running back gets elevated to a starting position, a lot of times it feels like people are like, oh, I have to play them. I don't think you have to play RJ Harvey, but he's in the running back 2 like range, and it really depends like how he's used as a pass catcher. Like he's shown pass catching ability even in the pros. So if he, gets 5+ targets, which he's done a couple times this year on limited work, like you're probably going to be happy. So I think he's a solid play at running back. And then we have our last non-prime time game. The Baltimore Ravens at 4-5 on the road against the Cleveland Browns. This game has a 38.5 point over-under. The Ravens are 7.5 point road favorites. No Justice Hill, no Rashad Bateman, no Marlon Humphrey at corner. Yeah, that's, I guess, those were the big pieces of news. Not that, Justice Hill and Bateman aren't really guys that you're trying to play anyways, but the Ravens are, I do think they're going to go on like a tear. Since Lamar Jackson has come back, getting healthier, I think they're going to be a tough team to beat. And just as importantly, their defense is getting healthier too. So season-long metrics-wise, the Ravens defense might look kind of like a pushover defense, but they've been playing better. They've been getting healthier. So I think they're going to dominate here. Lamar Jackson, you play him every week. As he gets healthier, he should be more and more mobile. The Browns do have a good defense. They're like a top, or I guess I should say a bottom 5 matchup for quarterbacks. But obviously you play Lamar. And then Derrick Henry, no Justice Hill, so Keaton Mitchell as the backup might be just step into that role, but maybe we see Derrick Henry slightly more involved in maybe he gets another target or 2, probably not, but that would be great. Yeah, the Browns have a really good run defense. They're like a top 3 run defense in the league for fantasy. And Henry hasn't been getting in the end zone. If you've watched the Ravens games, they get near the goal line and they've been doing play action and passing it to their tight ends, and it's just been kind of annoying if you have Henry. But the workload is there. Like his last 3 weeks, last week he had 20 carries, turned into 75 yards and no touchdowns. Like 19 for 119 the week before. The week before that, 21 for 71 and 2 touchdowns. But he had 3 targets last week, went 3 for 9. So you're playing him, obviously. Again, like with the matchup, he's probably more of like a low running back 1, high running back 2, but yeah, you're probably playing him. And then no Rashad Bateman at receiver, so that field stretcher isn't going to be there. Zay Flowers is a solid play. He's just kind of been a stable dude all year, not shown a ton of upside since week 1, but he profiles as a really solid wide receiver 2. And that's the only pass catcher I really want to play. Like, I don't want to play, like, even without Bateman, like maybe Hopkins gets a couple more targets, gets in the end zone, but I'm not counting on it. At tight end, Mark Andrews is playable as like a high tight end 2. Like I'd probably play Dalton Schultz over him. Theo Johnson is probably a better play. But after that, Andrews is probably pretty good. Very touchdown dependent, but he's gotten in the end zone each of the last 2 weeks since Lamar came back. And I played against him in both of those matchups in a league, so that makes sense. Last week, only 3 catches for 14 yards, but got in the end zone. And the week before that, 2 catches for 22 yards and 2 touchdowns. So very touchdown dependent. And Isaiah Likely he's been back from injury, not as involved as you would think. 2 for 17 last week, 3 for 60 the week before, both on 4 targets, but yeah. And then for the Browns, it's pretty much Quinshon Judkins at running back and then check out. Like I said, the Ravens defense has been playing better as they've been getting healthier. And you know, this could be a game where if the game gets away from him, Judkins isn't in a good game script to pound the rock, but he's still a really solid like running back 2. Against the Jets last week, it didn't amount to a great game for fantasy, but he had 22 carries, only 75 yards, but 2 for 10 through the air, 3 targets. So I think you're probably playing him as a running back 2, but you know, him versus like Kamani Vidal. Yeah, that's a tough one. Like I could see the game script going poorly for Judkins. But Dylan Gabriel's going to start again. You're not playing him. And then at receiver, if you had to play one guy, it would be Jerry Jeudy. He had his first good game of the year last week, which makes sense because I finally dropped him in a league after holding him all year. It's a league where you can't put out players on IR. They have to be on IR to be put on IR. So I like had to drop him because I had like bye weeks, like 4 or 5 players on bye, had injuries. It's like I have to drop him. I cannot drop anyone else. And against the Jets, he went 6 for 78 and a touchdown on 12 targets. So against the Ravens, you know, it's a tough defense. I wouldn't want to play him. He's like a wide receiver 4 DFS dart throw, but they're going to be losing most likely. So Dylan Gabriel might have to air it out. And a lot of his throws are not great throws, but you know what? He's routinely been well above 30 pass attempts. 1, 2, 3 in his last 5 games. He's been over 31 pass attempts 4 times. One of those being 52 against the Steelers. And then against the Dolphins, he only had 18. Pass attempts, that is. Cedric Tillman is back in the lineup. I think he's a talented player, but I don't want to like play him. And then a tight end, Njoku and Fannin are both active. So that kind of means you're probably not playing either. You know, if you had to play one, it's probably Fannin as like a tight end 2. Last week he did see 7 targets, so it only turned into 4 for 44, but he's involved. And tight end is gross, so he is technically playable. Let's move on to a way more exciting game. Sunday Night Football. Detroit Lions at 6-3 travel to Philadelphia, take on the Eagles at 7-2. This should be a fun game. 46.5 point over under. Eagles are 2.5 point home favorites. The Eagles offense looked pretty putrid against the Packers in primetime last week. I'm hoping that this game is much more exciting than that, and I think it will be. I think the Lions offense is too good for that game to go the same way. It is on the road, outside, not in a dome, so you know, could see Jared Goff not, you know. Oh, you could see Goff not have like a big game. Also, I was gonna say, chance of rain showers for that Broncos Chiefs game. Forgot to say that. Sorry. Also, I forgot to say, I keep forgetting the weather. I'm sorry. Browns game, wind 25 miles per hour potentially. Monitor that. I think I'm still playing all the guys like I said, but could lean on the run a little bit more. Lamar himself could run more even. But anyways, back to the game we're talking about. Let's start with the Eagles. Jalen Hurts, good play every week. Start him. Saquon Barkley, you start him. Running back 1. Lions are a tough run D, but don't care. You start Saquon. Might be limited though in terms of upside. And then a receiver, even though it's been rough for AJ Brown, I think you start him. Wide receiver 2, same with Devontae Smith. Both are wide receiver 2s, but I think you probably play both of them. And then Dallas Goedert, touchdown dependent. Tight end 1, honestly. I mean, last week he saw 6 targets, only went 4 for 43, but he's a fair bet to score. I believe he already has his touchdown career high, so maybe that just comes to a halt. But yeah, the Eagles are pretty easy to figure out here. And then for the Lions, I don't want to play Jared Goff in this situation. Um, yeah, I don't really want to play him, but his pass catchers are good. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a auto start. Jameson Williams has been a much better lately. It seems like I believe Dan Campbell took over play calling duties, and it seems like he's been more involved, like closer to the line of scrimmage, has a lower ADOT. So instead of just being like a field stretcher, deep shot guy, he's actually like getting more reliable touches. And the last couple weeks, he's been really good. 6 for 119 and a touchdown last week on 7 targets. The week before that, 4 for 66 and a touchdown on 6 targets. And especially if this game hits the over, he's a very playable, like wide receiver 2, flex type of guy with upside. No Sam Laporta at tight end, so that also might mean more targets to go to the other guys. And then Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery are both playable options at running back for the Lions. Eagles have, a relatively like solid defense. Obviously, they're a good defense, but you're not benching Jahmyr Gibbs. He's a must start. And then David Montgomery, not a must start, but more of a running back 2, high running back 3. You probably need a touchdown to be super happy, but he's seen 15 plus opportunities each of the last couple of weeks. Or 1 touchdown actually in week 9 against the Vikings, but solid, but not like super exciting play. And then finally, Monday Night Football, Dallas Cowboys at 3-5-1, taking on the Raiders on the road, who are 2-7. This game's in Las Vegas. So we have viewed the Cowboys defense as trash all year, rightfully so. They did make some moves coming off the bye week. So Quinn and Williams they brought in a trade, and we'll see how their defense looks coming out of the bye week with the new addition. But this game is also against the Raiders, who have not looked good on offense. So a lot of people are probably like trying to fit Raiders into their lineup. I don't think you have to do that. Geno Smith at quarterback is streamable as like a quarterback 2, but I wouldn't necessarily like bench a locked in option for him. 2 quarterback league, deep league, you don't have a good guy. If you're in one of those leagues where people like all roster 2+ quarterbacks, then okay, maybe he's more interesting. But DFS, you want to take a shot? Sure. He'll probably be popular like on daily lineups just because of the matchup. At receiver, you can take a shot on Trey Tucker. He, I could see him hitting a deep shot. And then Tyler Lockett is super gross, but someone to bring up. Last week, 6 targets against Denver turned into 5 for 44 in a gross game. So very, very deep league play. Wide receiver 4, but I wouldn't want to play him. And then Ashton Genty at running back. You play him. Hi. Oh, she didn't want to interrupt, but she's telling me she's awake. Oh, hi. That's my roommate. Oh, we're just talking about the Cowboys. Yeah. Talking about Ashton Genty. Speaking of being awake, Ashton Genty, he's going to really wake up. Bye. Where was I? Oh yeah, he's a running back 1. I mean, he's been up and down, but I know the Cowboys, maybe their defense improves with the moves they made, but you're still playing him. And then Brock Bowers. Very, 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 very good play. Obviously. Last week was rough, but that was against Denver. This is the Cowboys, so. And then on the Cowboys side of the ball, Dak Prescott is my start of the week. So I really like him, obviously. You can deduce from that logic. He's a quarterback 1. Javonte Williams is... Sorry, hold on. Okay, there we go. He's a good play. Running back 1. CeeDee Lamb. Wide receiver 1. Even George Pickens, you can make a case for him being a wide receiver 1. Maybe a high wide receiver 2. And then Jake Ferguson's a tight end 1. Like, he's probably a top 5 play. Maybe top 6 if you prefer Kelsey. But should be good. Over under is 49.5, which we like. Cowboys are 3.5 point road favorites. So anyways, I think that's going to do it for this podcast. This was a long one. The bye weeks are dwindling, so obviously you have more games to talk about, so that makes sense. So and I'm a yapper. So thanks for watching, much appreciated. We'll see you all in the next one. Good luck to everybody except your opponents. And yeah, see you next week. Peace.